All right, welcome to StackHunters. Dan Williamson joining me again, Bradley Stalder, and we've got a special episode. This is going to be a quick one relative to our previous recordings. We've got a great episode for you about top 10 best ball targets. Dan and I have been grinding the best ball streets on various platforms, and we wanted to bring you some of the top best ball targets at various positions. So make sure you guys are paying attention to those. We'll have all that and more right after this. All right, Dan, we've hit the FFPC streets. We have lived in DraftKings. We've hit drafters, but we also live in the underdog streets. And we're going to be referring to underdog ADPs, and they may vary from platform to platform, but we've identified these players as top 10 best ball targets. And I'm going to go first, Dan, and then we'll just continue to alternate between these targets, because it's important for our audience to understand that these are players that we don't want to reach on. We want to attack them at their ADP or very close to their ADP, and especially if we can supercharge them with stacks or supercharge them with ADP values or week 17 correlations. These are more player takes perspective than it is from a best ball strategy. Dan and I will talk more best ball strategy and styles in other podcasts throughout the summer. This one's going to be more player take based. So the first player that I want to be targeting, in the middle back end of the first round is Bijan Robinson. And Bijan Robinson right now is going as the running back 2, ADP 7. Last year finishing as the running back 17 fantasy points per game. He only had 214 rushing attempts in 17 games, but Dan, I am really excited about the prospect of Bijan Robinson turning into Christian McCaffrey. We saw that with 58 receptions last year. Tyler Algier, yes, he was still involved in this offense, but I expect a supercharge elevation for Bijan with his new offense. Kirk Cousins led this new head coach, new offensive coordinator. They're bringing a lot of things from the Rams. And we saw what Todd Gurley was able to do for many years in the Rams offense under Sean McVay. Now we see what is the possibility in Atlanta with a real quarterback, with first-round picks of Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan Robinson. This is a team primed for a breakout, and I think that it's not only Bijan's talent, but all rising tide lifts all boats. Bijan Robinson very easily pathway to RB1, but also Christian McCaffrey level, given his targets, his receptions, and his dynamism. So I think that now that Arthur Smith is out of there, we're not going to be seeing a lot of offensive coordinator issues. We're not going to be seeing, in terms of like giving Cordarrelle Patterson touches, right? Or Jonnu Smith touches. We're going to have a common sense offense here in Atlanta, and Kirk Cousins knows how to run this offense. There's a lot of dome games as well, so we don't have to be worried about weather. And Atlanta, we expect to be in games this year and more high-scoring games. So we expect a lot of things to flip the right way for Bijan in particular. And he was a generational prospect drafted last year. And I was actually out, Dan, on Bijan Robinson last year, given his ADP. He was a 1-2 turn type of guy. Now he's still, he's a little bit higher than last year, but there's trepidation that he's not going to be like, he's obviously behind McCaffrey. There's talk of, is he going to take over Breece Hall? But I think the Bijan Robinson upside case overtakes Breece Hall in terms of what the offense can do. Like the Jets, for instance, have to rely so much on efficiency and on Aaron Rodgers and his health. We saw how terrible things went last year. But Bijan Robinson, if everything goes right with Kirk Cousins, that could be really exciting. Dan, is he one of those targets for you as well in the middle end of the first round?
Well, I got to tell you, Bradley, the last time I had a coach telling me that his running back was going to get used like Christian McCaffrey, that was Ron Rivera telling me about Antonio Gibson. that did not turn out well, but I have a feeling this is going to turn out much better. So I am definitely
Riverboat Ron, you know,
Riverboat
is
Ron, yeah.
in the Coach Speak Index. I don't think is very high, you know.
No. So anyway, yes, I am with you on that one. I think it's a great pick. I think there's a slight difference in talent level between Antonio Gibson and Bijan Robinson. So
only a slight.
There's a slight difference in common sense between the offenses. And also, just the whole offensive system. There's quite a difference as well. So love that pick. I'm going to go with the running back as well. I'm going to go with Zack Moss, underdog ADP 92.2, running back 26. What I like about Zack Moss is the fact that the thing that's holding his price down right now is really uncertainty, because everybody's a little unsure. Is he going to get the job? Is it going to be more Chase Brown? Is it going to be some kind of a split, something like that? So, this is an opportunity where the uncertainty keeps the price down. But if Zack Moss wins the job, like I think he will, and is the, at least 1A and possibly, like the number one back, and then Chase Brown is just coming in to spell him. His ADP is going to shoot up if we find that out in the preseason. So I'm buying shares right now because I don't think that he's going to hurt me at running back 26, even if it ends up being, closer to a 50-50 split. I think that's what's priced in right now. And with Moss, we saw what he could do last year in Indianapolis. I mean, I know Moss didn't look good in Buffalo, but that was mostly his first year where, a lot of running backs don't look as good their first year. He's kind of got things figured out. He is a good receiver. He runs the ball well. He's good on the goal line. He does all the things that you want to see done well. He does them well. And he's on a plus offense. This is an offense that we expect to score a lot of points. And a few receivers get hauled down at the 1 yard line, which happens to a few offenses every year. They're like Miami, had so many running back touchdowns last year. That'll probably regress. Cincinnati, who knows? That could happen too. But even if it doesn't, even if he just gets a normal share of touchdowns, he's still going to be a really nice value here. So I'm in on Moss. I also like his shootout schedule because during the shootout he's got Tennessee, Cleveland, and Denver. It's at Tennessee, Cleveland at home, Denver at home. Cleveland definitely tough. Denver, I think, probably won't be quite so tough. Tennessee, definitely not so tough. So I like the shootout schedule as well. So I think Zack Moss has a little bit of everything going for him. What do you think, Bradley?
This is a player that I have 17% on Underdog and 24% on DraftKings. So he's a player that I'm very highly exposing myself to in terms of, the price is so nice. Like at that point, he's part of zero running back builds. You talked about the opportunity, the uncertainty, and the shootout schedule. Yeah, like none of those games scare you, but also these are teams that we expect the Bengals to be in games with. Like he's going to continue to touch the rock. The other part is Chase Brown. Like, is Chase Brown the real deal? Like a 5th round pick who can catch the ball and looks kind of dynamic, but is that the skill set that's going to get 15 touches a game, 17 touches a game? I think no. I think the Bengals brought him in to do exactly that, to touch the ball that many times and act as the Joe Mixon of the 2023 offense. So yeah, I'm also in on Zack Moss here. Dan, good call on that.
Awesome.
All right, before we move on and Dan and I reveal a few more best ball targets, a word from our sponsors.
This episode is made possible by Underdog Fantasy, and Underdog Fantasy is the leader in best ball. When you go to join an Underdog Fantasy best ball draft, it fills very quickly, especially now. It's Best Ball Mania season, baby. Best Ball Mania 5. I can't believe they're at Best Ball Mania 5 already. $15 million in prizes. They're giving out $15 million with $1.5 million to first. Playing in best ball leagues makes you better. It helps train you on player value and strategy. And Underdog offers a lot more than just best ball contests. They offer pick'ems. My new favorite, the golf pick'ems. They have the NBA pick'ems, baseball pick'ems going on throughout the offseason. Hit the pick'ems, back to best ball, hit the pick'ems. So use promo code Underworld. Promo code Underworld gets you a 50% deposit bonus up to $250. So they've increased the maximum deposit bonus. It was $100. Now it's up to $125. When you get the Underdog app, use promo code Underworld and go draft your ass off.
That's right. Go draft on Underdog Fantasy. Use the promo code Underworld. My next best ball target, Dan, might be a little more controversial. I'm okay with that, though. It's Nico Collins. Nico Collins right now is ADP 21.4 on Underdog, wide receiver 15. Collins finished last year, breakout season, wide receiver 7 in fantasy points per game, almost 1,300 receiving yards, 80 receptions, almost 110 targets in 15 games. 15 games, Dan. This is a player who was the wide receiver 2 in yards per route run, wide receiver 3 in yards per target, wide receiver 9 yards per reception. So here's the deal. This is why I'm in on Nico Collins. Not only are the efficiency metrics there and the PFF receiving grade there, he broke out. He had a great year last year in all facets. Not only is he winning, he's winning downfield. And what you want in best ball leagues is winners down the field. It always felt like Nico Collins was getting a 15-yard catch, a 17-yard catch, a 12-yard catch, a 25-yard catch. It always felt like Nico Collins was winning downfield. And he's got the size and speed to do it. He's 6'4", 215, 4'5", 40, 90th percentile speed score type of player, and a 95th percentile catch radius. All he needed to be unlocked was quality quarterback play from CJ Stroud, which is what we get here in year number 4 for Nico Collins. And the organization has said, we want Nico Collins. They gave him over $50 million guaranteed. They wiped out the Stephon Diggs guarantees after this year. It is very possible that Stephon Diggs he does what he does and goes away or fades away into the distance. We've seen streaky Stephon Diggs just disappear. And who would appear? It's Nico Collins. And I'm not worried about Tank Dell. He can coexist alongside Nico Collins. But we are here for this player who in isolation wins, and when he wins big. So I am here for Nico Collins, especially in the best ball streets.
Yep, makes sense, especially if you're out on Diggs, which I know you are, Bradley. Then this is a pick you've definitely got to make. And I think your reasoning on Diggs is very good. I'm a little bit more, not quite sure that Diggs is totally done yet, but what I will say is, even if he's not, this ADP is still fine. I'm still okay with Nico Collins right where he's at. I still think that he's going to do what you need him to do. So, I see him as at worst fairly priced, and if Diggs is, somehow not a big part of the offense, or if something happens to Tank Dell, then it's wheels up definitely for Nico. So liking that one. And did you say winning downfield? Is that what you said? I believe that was what you said.
Maybe a few times, actually.
Yes, you might have said that a few times. And when it comes to winning downfield, I'm going to give you the deep discount version of winning downfield, and that is Darnell Mooney. He's a player that I really like on an offense that I really like. You've already highlighted Bijan from the Falcons offense, and you've talked a little bit about that offense. What I like about Mooney, ADP 148.3, wide receiver 68. So we're not even talking about him being one of your
couldn't
top
get to 69,
ones.
Dan.
No, couldn't quite do it. But this is a wide receiver 6 most likely for you. Maybe a wide receiver 7 if you've been drafting him more aggressively. So, your expectations are nearly zero, and you're going to get rewarded, because the thing is with Darnell Mooney, he is, everybody's kind of off him because of the last 2 years in Chicago. Look at his quarterback play the last 2 years in Chicago. Look at the offense. He was hurt. He had the combination sprained ankle and broken leg. in 2022, and that was towards the end of the season. And then now, in 2023, he just never really quite looked right. He should be right now, and he's going to have all kinds of attention not on him because of who he's playing with, right? So we know that we know that we like Drake London. We know we like Bijan Robinson. We know we like Kyle Pitts, and everybody says, oh, those guys are going to get all the targets. Yeah, what that means is Darnell Mooney is going to be running deep down the field with pretty much, the worst corner on him most of the time. And that's totally fine with me because you know what? Kirk Cousins knows how to throw the ball up there and hit a receiver deep. So it's going to be fun times, and with that ADP, you don't need him to be huge. But here's the thing. I mean, if he gets even 100 targets, which he easily could in this offense, that's going to be fantastic because, he had 140 targets in 2021 in Chicago. That's not coming back. 61 targets each of the past 2 years, playing 12 games and 15 games. And he's playing in Atlanta in his perfect position. He's going to be the wide receiver. You're going to have Drake London at the X. You're going to have Kyle Pitts as the big slot. And you're going to have Darnell Mooney playing the wide receiver. So he's going to be running a lot of go routes, and he's going to be hauling down a lot of passes, and you're going to really like this. So, and also the shootout schedule is fantastic for Atlanta as well. They've got at Las Vegas, the New York Giants at home, and at the Washington Commanders. So this is a shootout schedule that, again, is not scary in any way, and so it looks good. Wheels up, I think, on Mooney. What do you think?
I think he's appropriately priced. We think of who the wide receiver 3 for the Vikings was last year, KJ Osborne. He was wide receiver 66 in terms of best ball value rating. So this is about the right spot for a player like this. I'm okay with clicking Mooney.
But do you think he's really the wide receiver 3 here? Because, in Minnesota, we had Hawkinson, who is comparable to Pitts. So I think he's more in the Jordan Addison role.
I could see it. When was it? Not the 140 target season. He earned he was the wide receiver 11 in target rate, wide receiver 17 in target share, wide receiver 17 in target rate, wide receiver 11 in target share. So flip flop those. But he was the option. Now he doesn't need to be the option. Right. We do know Kyle Pitts does line up a lot on the outside, so that's kind of what I had pegged him. But Pitts is not going to run all of those out routes. On the Y, it's going to be Mooney, and there is a lot of trust. So maybe somewhere between Osborne and Addison is where maybe I can compromise. But still, that's a good value. Addison last year was wide receiver 24, so. He could deliver a few pretty big weeks if we're getting wide receiver 40s, wide receiver 30s from Darnell Mooney instead of, you're getting him at a nice value, wide receiver 60. So, Dan, I think you're talking me into a little bit more Darnell Mooney.
Yeah, I mean, the hate on him is too strong. People have been burned by him the past couple of years. And they coming from Chicago, nobody who walks out of Chicago really looks good.
Poor Justin Fields.
But yeah, I just think that he's got a really good opportunity here, and he can play in the slot too. He has done some of that. So and I know they have Rondale Moore, and he's going to get touches. But I look at Rondale Moore as a little bit more of the KJ Osborne, and I think Mooney's probably closer to Jordan Addison than he is to KJ Osborne, but we'll see.
We will see. I don't mind taking Darnell Mooney at his price, and he's also, a nice little tap with Kirk Cousins at that spot. But don't want to bury too much, Dan. Next is for me the next best ball target, Jonathon Brooks, ADP 88, running back 24, and right now Jonathon Brooks it's like everyone has forgotten that he was the number 1 drafted running back in this class. And if he wasn't for the ACL, like, would he have been a first-round pick, a borderline first-round pick in the NFL draft? Real talk, Dan, if he already got early to mid second-round draft capital with the ACL tear and with those medicals, you have to wonder if that would have been on someone's radar, at least at the end of the draft. But he was scooped up by Carolina. And for running backs, it's all about situation. And I don't care about if he's going to be doing whatever for the first couple weeks coming back. We saw with Breece Hall, he was a little slower coming back from his ACL tear, first couple weeks, blah, blah, blah. This is about the meat of the season and the playoffs. The Carolina Panthers are just going to be better than last year. There's no way that they could be worse. They've added Deontay Johnson, who gets open so much. They bring in, other players. Xavier Legette, as much, there's haters on both sides, but this is an offense with Dave Canales that you can expect to elevate. And so with the rising tide lifting all boats, this is a player, Jonathon Brooks, who crushed last year at Texas before his ACL tear, and he's going to get the opportunity. Miles Sanders is not good. Chuba Hubbard is a replacement level back who played admirably last year. So Jonathon Brooks, the Carolina Panthers have put a lot behind him. And if they are 3-5 through the first 8 games, they're still in it. And they're going to continue to ride their second round pick the second half of the season. So don't be afraid of Jonathon Brooks being out the first couple weeks of the season or being slowly rolled. It's going to be okay. He is very good, and he will take over by the end. So trust that the Carolina Panthers are going to give their very talented second round pick a lot of opportunity in the second half of the season. That's why I'm in on Jonathon Brooks. Running back 24, he might be running back 36, running back 40 in the first half of the season, but we could be talking about running back 5, running back 7 through the second half of the season. And that's what we want to hit, especially in those playoff weeks. So, Dan, I'm in on Jonathon Brooks at that price. There's almost 100. Like some sites, he might fall to 100. So give me Jonathon Brooks.
Yeah, I like the idea of Brooks. I'm having a little bit more trouble than you buying into him, just because of the fact that we're looking at a rookie here who is also coming off an ACL tear, and it's hard enough for running backs, even the really good ones. And I fully agree that Brooks is really good. And I'm a little bit nervous, though, that he has, kind of the double adjustment to make. So I'm a little more leery. If he's running good by week 6, week 8, something like that, and he really is back to full speed and he's fearless, then we probably got something. I'm probably going to be even weight on Brooks just because I don't want to have none. But I won't be overweight on him just because I am worried about the whole situation there. Because Chuba Hubbard is good enough that he can hold down the job if needed. And I wonder whether Canales is going to really rush Brooks back or whether he's going to slow play him a little bit and make sure he's got his feet underneath him. We have seen Todd Gurley, who kind of was coming off a similar situation when he was drafted, right? And he basically he missed the first 2 games. Game 3, he had 6 attempts for 9 yards, and then game 4, 19 for 146. Game 5, 30 for 158. Game 6, 19 for 128. Game 7, 20 for 133. Obviously, very different offense, but it tells you that it is possible for these younger players to come out and really fire up. So I'm afraid to be late on him, but I'm afraid to be a little bit too heavy on him too, because I have seen rookie running backs coming off ACL tears like this and having trouble. So I'll preach a little bit of caution, but I do like the pick. I do like the player.
All right. Well, Dan, you get the opportunity to stack. This is StackHunters. So
Yes.
I'm teeing you up to stack your next best ball target.
Yes, exactly. We just talked about Darnell Mooney. So Kirk Cousins is next up. And, this is a nice pairing that you can get super late. Kirk Cousins is going ADP 140, quarterback 18. If Cousins is healthy, there's no way he's finishing as low as quarterback 18 in this offense. He is going to be a top 12 quarterback for sure, quite probably a top 8 quarterback, is the way I see it. So he's a great value on his own. You can stack him up with Mooney. You're 140 picks into the draft, so basically 12th round, pick up Mooney in the 13th round. You got yourself a cheap back end stack, and it costs you almost nothing. So I like Cousins. Also, we already talked about the shootout schedule. We've already talked about Bijan Robinson. We've kind of indirectly mentioned Pitts and Drake London. He's got all the weapons. He's in the right offense. He knows this offense. This is basically the same thing they're running in Minnesota. The verbiage will be a little bit different. They'll have a few different plays, but by and large, he does know this offense, and I'm sure that they're going to figure out what he does well and stick to it. I mean, unless you believe that they're going to actually throw Michael Penix in for some reason with Kirk Cousins healthy, there's no way his ADP should be this low.
Yeah, no.
The floor is yours, Bradley.
Yeah, Kirk Cousins, it just doesn't make sense if you've got Bijan and London and Pitts at their current ADPs. The trepidation, I guess, is that he's, not fully healed from the Achilles, but that's not going to stop me. That's not going to stop me, especially if I'm drafting Pitts or London. He's so late. It's worth the click anyways. Like, that's why it makes sense. Like, especially if you're stacking, but even if he falls a little bit as an ADP value, that's fine. And yes, this may not be the number one passing volume offense anymore, but we anticipate it's still going to be, a good one. We expected this to be either efficient or have decent volume. So no, I'm not too worried about clicking Kirk Cousins. I think that's a fine pick. And it's one that feels pretty safe. Like quarterback 18 feels like, okay, it's fine. It doesn't take much for him to overcome. And if anything, Kirk Cousins has shown us in the past, touchdowns falling the right way can catapult him into quarterback 8, quarterback 7. And then that's a massive, massive difference. So yes, we want to be in on Kirk Cousins at that value for sure. Okay. Well, all I've right. Got another rookie. I feel like I'm, on rookie fever here, Dan, but we need to be in on, you talked about Darnell Mooney getting opportunity to be like the wide receiver 2. We keep falling down the draft board, and the wide receiver 2 for the Pittsburgh Steelers is right there staring at us in the face. It's Roman Wilson, the 3rd round rookie. Who else is it going to be? It's not going to be, random players
Van
off
Jefferson?
The street.
You're
Van Jefferson?
No
to Van Jefferson.
Is that what you're saying? No to Van Jefferson?
Instead, let's look at Roman Wilson, what he did last year. Oh, he didn't get a lot of volume. He had 55 total targets at the University of Michigan. At the University of Michigan, Jim Harbaugh run first offense. Let's not be too worried about what Roman Wilson can or can't do. Roman Wilson, 11 touchdowns on 40 receptions.
Yeah,
11
exactly.
touchdowns on 40 receptions. My God. Oh, my gosh. Now, you're like, but Bradley, touchdowns, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. His PFF receiving grade was 85.9. That's really good, Dad. This is a player who was getting open. His yards per route run was nearly 3, and he was winning downfield. Average up at the target 14.8. So this is a player who was winning downfield, getting touchdowns, and he was getting well graded against various competition. He had 2 touchdown game against Nebraska. Michigan State, they clobbered, but whatever. A 3 touchdown game against East Carolina. Ohio State, against Ohio State, one of the best programs in the world. Still had a touchdown, 3 receptions on 6 targets. Like, he was still an important part of that offense. Purdue 9 for 143 on 11 targets. He's going to get open for Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. Fine. I think the bear case for anyone on Pittsburgh is that Justin Fields takes over as the passing option. But I think Russ, for right now, is the favorite. They want Russ to be the answer. And Russ has been able to sustain 2 fantasy relevant options. And George Pickens is obviously wide receiver 1 there. We expect 22 to 28%, somewhere in that range for Pickens. Depends on the game. But Roman Wilson, what's stopping him from being almost automatically Tyler Lockett?
Yeah, I think Wilson's a great pick. The way I look at it is, so Michigan had a good running game, right? That's the rumor. Is that the rumor?
That is the rumor.
Okay, that is the rumor. And I've also heard a rumor that Pittsburgh is going to have a really good running game. If he can be successful at Michigan with a really good running game, I think he'd probably do the same thing with the Steelers. I like the fact that he was so efficient with his touches. He is quite fast as well. He's got great speed, so he's got the athleticism you want to see that you don't always get with wide receivers.
4.3 940.
Right, exactly. So he can burn it a little bit, and he again was super efficient in college, which is something I'm always looking for. Yeah, the volume wasn't there, but you know what? If you can be in on Ladd McConkey, and a lot of people are, and I'm not saying he needs to go where Ladd McConkey goes. There are some big differences, but if you can be in on a player like Ladd McConkey, you ought to be in on a player like Roman Wilson as well. So, and at ADP 155, wide receiver 71, he's not going to break you if for some reason he feels to fire. But I do think he's going to fire, and if he does, he's going to give you great ADP value, much the same as Darnell Mooney. So, love it, loving the pick there.
Dan, trivia question.
Yes.
Do you know Player Profiler comp for Roman Wilson?
Oh, I don't remember who it is. You're going to say it. I'm going to hate myself.
Stephon Diggs.
Ah, there it is. Yes.
You love to see it. And rookie year Stephon Diggs, 52 for 720 and 4 touchdowns. He was wide receiver 42. Let's go, baby. That was 13 games. So, yeah, Dan, Stephon Diggs, that's your boy. That's your Minnesota boy.
He was. Hopefully Roman Wilson doesn't burn bridges at the same rate as Diggs, but we'll see. So I'm going to stick with the rookie theme here, and I'm going to go with a rookie of my own. I'm going to go with Brock Bowers, ADP 101.2, tight end 11 in the Underdog Street. And that, I think, is a really, really nice price for a guy who's supposed to be basically the best rookie tight end to come out since Kyle Pitts, and maybe even including Kyle Pitts, depending on who you talk to. We know Pitts failed to fire. We also have a pretty good idea of the main reasons why Pitts failed to fire. He only had 1 season without Arthur Smith, and he got 1,000 yards that season. And since then, he's looked great. Or actually, no, he was at Arthur Smith that first year. Maybe it was.
Yes.
Anyway, so he got 1,000 yards even with Arthur Smith. We're looking at Brock Bowers, who is going to an offense that's probably going to be helmed by Minshew, Gardner Minshew, and I like what Gardner Minshew can do. He's not going to light the world on fire, but he keeps an offense on schedule. He almost got the Colts into the playoffs. So you got to like the quarterback situation as being good enough to support Bowers. He's got decent players around him. He's got Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers. So he's going to be able to run wild a little bit, I think. And at tight end 11, I like the price because you know what? If he does even what Pitts did, he's going to be a moneymaker for you. Pitts' rookie year, I mean. So I like what Bowers is capable of there in that offense. And if anything happens to Devontae Adams, anything happens to Jacoby Myers, it's going to be really wheels up for Bowers.
Yeah. I think Brock Bowers fits into that offense pretty well. He's a player that I think is, in my projections, he's the tight end 10 right now. But I don't mind clicking him. And if anything, in a lot of the underdog streets, Dan, what I found is, among the top 12 tight ends, Brock Bowers is the one who most often falls significantly, like 10, 12, 15 spots. And so, this is a player that I think there was room already for a third receiving option with Adams and Jacoby Myers. I projected Brock Bowers for an 18% target share, about 100 targets. So, this is a player that we can see some spike weeks. Gardner Minshew is a capable quarterback. I don't think he's a superstar by any means, but you mentioned it. He is able to run an offense. He's able to get the balls to his guys. And that's what he was able to do with Michael Pittman last year. And so I think Brock Bowers will be just fine.
And can I add, at 100
Yeah.
targets where you have him projected, if he gets 100 targets, he's pretty much a lock to be a top 10 tight end.
Yeah.
I mean, at 100 targets, it's very rare that a tight end is even worse than tight end like 7 or 8, because there's usually only 5 or 6 tight ends that get 100 targets per year. And if he's one of those guys, I mean, just the volume alone is going to lift him. So that you just made me feel even better about my pick. Thank you, Bradley.
You're welcome, Dan. Well, I'll close it out with also another tight end pick. We'll round it out. Dan will still have one more pick here, but my pick here is I think there's a tier break from this player down to the rest of the tight ends. I still like Evan Engram over Brock Bowers. I think the upside case for Evan Engram is just so high with now Calvin Ridley gone. Who else is going to stretch the field? Evan Engram is going to be the field. Oh, it's going to be Gabriel Davis. No, don't give me that crud. Brian Thomas is going to get his way onto the field, but Evan Engram is the trusted player for Trevor Lawrence. Like, it's him and Christian Kirk. It's going to take time for Brian Thomas and Gabe Davis, everybody to get integrated in that offense. And we saw for the last couple of years, like, Evan Engram is one of the top tight ends in terms of not just fantasy points, where he was the tight end 4 last year, but he had 143 targets with Calvin Ridley still there. And yes, Christian Kirk was out for a little bit and Zay Jones was out for a little bit, but 960 receiving yards, 100. We talked about 100 targets being good for Brock Bowers, 140 targets last year for Evan Engram. He was the tight end 2 in target share, almost 24%, and led all tight ends in receptions, 9th among tight ends in yards per route run. Still very efficient in terms of what he brings the tight end position. And at tight end 8, 76th overall. And in the way you're trying to build your team, if you haven't attacked the elite tight ends, like the Kelseys and the Laportas, the Trey McBrides, if you haven't attacked those, Evan Engram, I think, is the tier break before you get into your Njokus and your Jake Ferguson's. I think Evan Engram just offers a lot more upside than like that next tier of tight ends. So I like tapping Engram when we get into that position of, okay, I'm starting round 7. I'm at the end of round 6. I want to get that tight end position on lockdown before I maybe have to take shots at other players that, yes, like the upside and my projections are good for Brock Bowers, but we'll see if maybe he's the 3rd receiving option in Vegas for the majority of the season. We saw Michael Mayer not be able to get things going in that Vegas offense, and maybe people are pro Mayer. I don't know, but the issue really is like there's downside cases a lot more when you get past Evan Engram, and I think it's not going to be as much there for Evan Engram and above. So I think he's a major tier break.
Bradley, I've been pounding the drum for Evan Engram basically the entire offseason. I was just talking about this with Matt Kelly on Mind to Mansion yesterday, and I just don't understand the people who are still out on Evan Engram. It makes no sense to me, because this is a Doug Peterson offense who he always features a tight end anytime he's got anybody good. He went out and made a priority ad of Evan Engram when they brought him in as a free agent. It is not Evan Ingram's fault that he was stuck playing for the Giants in an offense that ran him laterally instead of down the seam like he should be used, in an offense that didn't give him nearly enough targets, bad quarterback play. All that is gone. We're looking at Trevor Lawrence, very solid quarterback, in an offense that features the tight end year after year after year. I don't care who they brought in at wide receiver. It doesn't matter to me, because Doug Peterson's offense features the tight end. He's going to get used. And even if you want to say, well, I'm really big on Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas, I think they're going to be fantastic. Well, I don't know about that. I mean, we've seen Gabe Davis. We pretty much know what he is. Brian Thomas is a rookie. There's some things I like about him. There are also a couple concerning metrics about him. I don't think he's a guaranteed surefire hit. But also, they're replacing targets from Zay Jones and Calvin Ridley. And if those two guys can just pretty much stay even with what Zay and Calvin Ridley did last year, they're probably doing pretty good. So, again, that leaves Ingram's share pretty much untouched. So I'm all the way in on Engram this year. I think he's at a fantastic price, and I think the fact that he played for a big market team where he was not very well liked for a number of years is continuing to depress his value, and I'm going to take that discount all year long.
Engram is my tight end 4 in projections. So
yes, exactly.
You love to see it. All right, Dan, close us out. Who is your last best ball target?
All right, I'm going to take Dontayvion Wicks.
Go Pack, go! Go Pack, go!
I knew I could make you happy with that pick, Bradley. His ADP 126.7, wide receiver 60, so the very last wide receiver 5 before you're into the wide receiver 6s. And again, if you're drafting aggressively, he might be your wide receiver 6 or maybe even your wide receiver 7. Who knows? But Wicks he's definitely got talent. We saw that last year. If you watched any of the games at all, you could see the talent flash anytime he was playing. And he's got multiple roads to success, because we hope that Christian Watson's hamstrings are better this year. They're talking up a great game, but we don't know that that's going to be the case. We also have Romeo Doubs, who is not the greatest wide receiver. Wicks is just flat out more talented than him. And I think if the Packers are recognizing that, Wicks is probably going to start eating into his playing time as well. So you've got a couple of routes that he could get there, even if he doesn't just kind of force his way in on his own with everybody else healthy. So I like where he's at. The Green Bay passing offense looks really good. Jordan Love, gosh darn those Packers. I'm getting so sick of them just going from great quarterback to great quarterback to great quarterback. Me as a Vikings fan and just sitting there watching and going, this sucks. So, but it is good for Dontayvion Wicks, and you got to like that shootout schedule too. He's got a nice one. He's got at Seattle, New Orleans at home, and then at Minnesota in the Dome. And the Vikings defense looks like it's going to be some pretty hot trash, especially probably by week 17. So, yeah, I'm all in on Wicks here at that price, because I don't need a lot out of him at that price, and I do think that there are multiple roads to success.
Wicks was wide receiver 28 in PFF receiving grade last year. That was ahead of everyone's beloved Jaden Reed.
Mm-hmm.
And Wicks, that was on plays. His yards per reception was 25% longer than Jaden Reed. So he was getting further down the field. He was winning down the field. And I kind of scoffed when the coaches for Green Bay were comparing him to Devontae Adams. I'm like, that's a stretch. But, I mean, he's playing very well, and there are pathways for him to succeed. So, and what we saw last year was four straight games for Green Bay where they had a different 100 receiving yard receiver. Like there's no wide receiver one on this team. It's wide receiver one by committee. Maybe it's Watson one day. Maybe it's Jaden Reed. Maybe it's Wicks. Maybe it's Bo Melton. Maybe, maybe it's Malik Heath for all we know.
Samurai
right?
Tour, anyone?
Yeah. Oh, and I didn't even mention Romeo Dubs, right? And so the reality
did you
is
forget him again, Bradley?
Dubsful, doubtful, whatever. It sounded better in my head, whatever. So, set your team on fire. Make sure that it has a wick in it.
Yeah, there you go. Very nice.
All right. On that note, we're going to close out in a second. Just make sure you guys are following Dan on the X Machine at Overhyped Sleeper, no E at the end. Follow me on Twitter at FFStalder. Smash the subscribe button, especially if you like the content. Support us here at Player Profiler. Until next time, everyone, good luck in the best ball streets.
From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to playerprofiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, data analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.